Yo, what is good, Oak Life community, fam? We are back. Chris and Greg and Chris, Craig, with another episode of Roots and Branches. We got Roots and Branches behind us, so it's very applicable today. So you're welcome for that. Today we're talking about bodies, correct?
Yeah.
So this message is brought to you in part by the city of Oakland and Lake Merritt. Make sure to hit a lap around the lake. Make you feel better about your life. Make you feel better in your body. So in regards to body, the concept has come up a lot personally in my life, and in our conversation, Chris and I were attending a conference in Charlotte with the With Collective, and the theme of body came up a lot, and you wanted to talk a little bit about bodies, right?
Yeah, I mean, it just seemed like a theme that was coming up, and I think one of those things that we overlook in our spiritual lives, our health, like I think often we detach spirituality from the physical, but I don't know if that's healthy long term. Like I think in our culture, at least from my experience, the relationship with our bodies is either like we're obsessed with it, or we like exploit our bodies or commodify our bodies, or we like are detached and we don't listen to our bodies. And so at this conference, they had us do all these different exercises, and there's the actual physical like practice, but there's also the spiritual implications of those things. And for me, it's always been kind of I'm not good at listening to my body or like being present to my body, and I don't think I treat it that well all the time. And I don't know if I always have like gratitude around my body. Sometimes I have like shame or insecurity. And I think, like, as I talk to people, we all kind of have that. So this is kind of just throwing up some ideas around that, having a little conversation on our body and how it's a deeply spiritual thing to be aware of our body. So, Greg, what's been your relationship with your body? It's kind of even weird to talk about. It's like, tell me about your body, like, but in I guess a more sincere way, like, what's been your relationship to your body? We both have similar stories kind of in some ways, but growing up, lately, all that with God, like, yeah, what's been your relationship to your body?
My growing up overweight child, just for reference, 5th grade, 200 pounds, 16 years old, 300 pounds. I was a bigger kid, just big, right, round, right. And my body has always been a thing of hindrance. It prevented me from doing X, Y, and Z, source of shame, source of regret, all that fun stuff.
Did you feel that, like, when you were 15 at school, like in the locker room, or like, did you have locker rooms?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, locker rooms, PE class.
Oh yeah.
Dances, like all that. Yeah. I
didn't dance. There were dances. I remember. I learned how to take off my undershirt without my overshirt coming off. I make sure deodorant was on under the thing. When I ran, we had to run. I ran like this, so my jiggles didn't bounce too much. I started biting my nails. Fun fact, I started biting my nails as a way to keep my hands in front of me without just looking silly, like this the whole time. So if I would do this, it was a way to cover up without, give myself a reason to cover up. So yeah, all that stuff.
And did something change? Or do you feel like, talk about the process of, like, at least in a health way, you like fitness stuff, like you're into it now. Bruce Lee, martial arts, like we do push-ups sometimes, like, so there's even people at Oak Life that you work out with. Do you think you have a healthier relationship with your body now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Heck yeah.
Well, what's that process?
The body is a source of expression. Our bodies are our expression of what is internalized, what is inside of us, and at least it can be. It doesn't always have to be, or doesn't always work that way, but it totally can be. Quick snapshot. At 16, my uncle from Michigan was like, hey, you're gonna work out with me. So I learned about fitness at 16. Lost 75 pounds that year, and then dropped down through studying like different martial arts to like 180. I walk around 208, 210 now. And I've learned a lot about myself, my abilities, my fears, my struggles through the process of either martial arts weightlifting and just learning about technique and process and understanding how to express certain emotions and things along those lines. It's been a good way to force myself to listen to what my body is telling me, and a good way to express those emotions in a healthy way that's both productive and beneficial. So yeah, it's been good for me.
How about spiritually? Like, where has your faith intersected with body, health, fitness, all that stuff?
There's a quote. Bruce Lee says, being a martial artist, a human being, an actor, all these things I've learned from the martial arts. And I feel the same way. Faith, understanding relationships, how to connect with people, all these things I've learned through what martial arts has told me about my body, understanding aspects about my body and how it relates to me, I relate to it, makes understanding faith, understanding humanity, it just makes it more clear based on the understanding I have about my body and martial arts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Ping pong, back to you, man. Back to you, because you have some history with body and practices that have brought clarity and healing for you as well.
My story isn't that dissimilar, like slightly different. I didn't have an uncle, but at some point, somebody, maybe myself, or I think actually when I started becoming serious about my faith, there was like a sense of empowerment that like I started to see my body, so the shame that I had with like at school or amongst friends or like people not finding me attractive, or at least me feeling like I wasn't attractive to people I wanted to date or whatever, all those things, that's kind of what I carried. And at some point, the Jesus Christian message of our bodies are good and sacred, that somehow crept into my spirit, and it gave me some like willpower or strength to start running and even being aware of what I was eating. And that was also like late teenage years for me, and so I lost a lot of weight, and I still struggle with it. Like I still struggle with weight and eating, and but it's not separate from my faith, which it was. Now it's like this thing that I got into, and I try to counterbalance the message from my own mind of like your body's gross or like you should hide it, and I try to hear the message, I would say, from scripture and from my faith of like our bodies are good and sacred and beautiful. God came to us in body, and I think for me, like, I definitely compartmentalize spiritual and physical, and I think of like spiritual things, I think of praying in a room or singing songs. These geese are loving this, but I think the reality is the process you described is totally spiritual. Like how we express, how we are present to the world is through our bodies. They're flying away now. See you guys.
Not a distraction at all.
Yeah. Hopefully you could hear me over the geese. But yeah, another piece like I think is important is as I talk with people, like a lot of us, there's things we'll never fully like about our bodies, like and that we don't have capacity to change. Like I wish I was a little bit taller. I wish I was a baller. Yeah. Girl look good on the collar. Like there's certain things like I don't know how to reconcile, because we're given the bodies we have, and I think the choice is to see them as a deficit, like it's not good enough, or gift. Like this is what I have, and I know it could be easy for me to say that as like an able-bodied male, like, but there's things that I wish my body was better at, and so there's some tension in there, like there's things we can change, but there's also some like not finding our identity fully in our body and how it measures up to society standards, but finding it in something deeper. And I've worked with folks who like have had their bodies fail and had illness and passed away, and like all of us will go through something in life where we actually have to like grieve the loss of our body, its function, its changing. And I think we should listen to that process, because it points us to what's really most important in life. So like the relationship with your body is a rich human experience, spiritual experience, and something to listen to. And I think that's part of the reason like this has been coming up so much, is because maybe God's telling us to listen to our body more. Like, I feel like that's a message for me. Like,
Hands down.
I need to be, not just in order to be healthy, but to be more whole and aware. Like, I had a friend who was dealing with a lot of stress, and their work was like, they sit at an office, they go home and sleep, they eat food, and they started to get like back pain and a bunch of things where they were like also having panic attacks and feeling like stressed, and they started to go to a dance class, which allowed them like an awareness of their body, like, oh, I can move, and I've never done that before, and they became more aware of their body, and that's spiritual. And that's like, I think the spiritual journey is becoming aware of the sacred all around, and we do that through our five senses and through the flesh that we've been given. So I rambled there a bunch about body stuff,
though.
but
It's good.
yeah,
It's good. I think the process that you keep coming back to is the listening to the body and understanding that is good. We believe as people of faith that creation is good. God created, the beauty that we find in a sunset of the nature that's around us. God also created these bodies. So, like, how do we take these concepts of good and how do we use them? How do we try to work against vilifying the body? Oh, whatever, it's a source of temptation, ... or it's shameful, it leads all our desires, ... It's not about idolizing or vilifying the body, but rather just using it. It's good. What can we learn from it? What can we express? How can we take the gifts that we've been given, the good that we've been given, and learn from them? I still, to this day, have struggles that prevent me from doing certain things with my body. But I don't look at it as a hindrance. I look at it as how can I grow from this? How have I become better? I have, for the sake of time, I'll spare all the details. But if you want to talk about this one-on-one, I can go on and on about certain aspects of my body, or just body in general. But the lessons that I've personally gotten and that Chris has gotten from the conversations we've had, it's a gift. It's a gift, and it grows and it sharpens and it develops who we are. And more specifically, the biggest lesson that I've been getting currently in my class, both classes, I have separate classes that have nothing to do with one another, and we were talking about bodies in the same weeks, and that was the same week we was in this conference talking about bodies. There's a lot to be said around us as individuals, understanding what our body is, how do we communicate with it, how do we appreciate it, for a very personal, individual aspect, but then how do we take that as church communities and stop isolating our church from their church, or this group at the church from that group at the church. If the body is to work cohesively, we got to be in communication and we got to be aware of one another. And I think that's probably one of the biggest takeaways on like a spiritual aspect. Like, what are these lessons that the body is teaching us? It's just how do we connect and come together as a people. And again, I can riff out for super duper long, but
that's good.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, and I'm also thinking about people like who have chronic ailments or things about their body that like need to change. And I guess I just want to honor that. Like, I know that there's folks who have disabilities, or there's things in their body that need to be corrected, and my experience is, even with people like who have transitioned, like my friends who have let me into that story, as they're listening to their bodies and seeing their bodies as sacred instead of shameful, there is like this richness of human experience that comes out, and an encounter with God. And so wherever I think we all are on our body experience, like, because there's so many different layers to this, like gender, race, like height, ability. I think there's a healthier way we all need to walk towards. And I don't think our culture commodifies bodies and objectifies bodies, and then like doesn't know how to have a healthy relationship with the body. So I actually think that's where like all these movements like yoga and all the dance classes that are out there, and like you walk around the lake on like a Saturday, there's people doing capoeira, there's people jogging. Like, we're longing for a healthy, redemptive view of our bodies, but there aren't, like, it's hard to capitalize, so there aren't a lot of like places to do it. So I don't even know what that looks like in a Christian community. Like, most churches, we go and sit and we go and eat, we do some like spiritual practices, but maybe I'll throw this question at you and we can kind of start landing this. But what?
Yeah, we're at 15 minutes, bro.
Yeah, it's about the cap. What do you think we could do better as a church? Jiu-jitsu?
Hands down. Say no more, bro.
Just as everyone at church is going to do jiu-jitsu. I'm not doing that, man.
So you're closed off to the body. You're not letting God move, man. You're not letting God move. That's actually a question that's come up in my class. I'm doing a class on the theology of sport and science, and how do we as people of faith honor the bodies in a more physical way, rather than having donuts and coffee on a Sunday. How do we nourish our bodies? How do we make our bodies active? So that's something that we're thinking through. I mean, it depends. It depends on the congregation. It depends on the location. It depends on the church community. For us specifically at Oak Life, in conversation, there are a handful of people that are active in various ways. And I think just finding where the rhythms of movement are, I think as far as health is concerned, movement is the priority. That's it. It doesn't have to be a martial art. It doesn't have to be a form of dance or training or anything. But where, as a community, are there places of physical movement, and how do we make that aware to the congregation, and how do we support that? I mean, I think that's where the start and probably the end is. What about the opposite of movement? Like, what about stillness? Because I think the underlying thing, movement is good, it's healthy, you listen, you learn about your body, but also like even just being present to your body, like in a meditation, like listening to your body, like taking a moment of stillness. So you're not moving, but you're doing... I'll counter you. I'll counter you with that. Any type of training, an element of it is recovery. Sure. And here's the thing. I know people that, and this isn't necessarily saying that this is for everybody, but I know people that have had problems sleeping, that had problems being still. And on the days that they worked and they pushed their body longed for rest and allowed them to be still. I think there's a lot that goes on up here, and if it doesn't have a way to come out, then you cannot be still even if your body isn't active. Sure. So I think to embrace those moments of stillness, you have to do what's counterintuitive and move. Sure. And then that will invite space to be still. That's my counter. Yeah. So you're saying I'm right and you're right? Yes. Okay. That's good. Yeah, I think that was a 9 move for you. And that was a 2 because I wanted you to feel loved and me to feel loved. So yeah, good. I guess wherever anybody is at, like, I hope we can all see each other's bodies as beautiful. Maybe even like speak that out somehow in a way that's appropriate. And then we could together learn how to be in our bodies more, aware of our bodies, and celebrate the range of where we're each at. I'll have one closing idea, and if there's any last things you want to say. At this conference, there's this band called The Many, and they have a song called These Bodies. Is that what it's called? Bodies, I think. Bodies. It's called Bodies. Might be These Bodies. It's either Bodies or These Bodies. The band is called The Many. You can look them up on Spotify. A great theology of body in that song, and it's a beautiful song. I think the lyrics are, you gave us these bodies and you called them good. So check that out. That's it. That's good. Wait, you're supposed to have one last thing. You said if. Okay. I talked a lot. All right. I would say go find a way to move. A lot of times music incorporates that. It doesn't have to be, but I think as we step into this time of, I guess I do have something to say, as we step into this holiday season, sweets come out and insecurities go up, and then we step into, New Year's resolutions and all that fun stuff. I think without overcomplicating things, just finding one type of movement that you enjoy and doing that. I think that'll be a wealth of good for all of us. Cool. That's it. Peace out. Love from Craig and the drum team.